managing and protecting the world's grueling number of endpoints, enabling Tanium's customers to see, control, and protect every endpoint everywhere. Tanium's mission is to provide certainty in uncertain times with the industry's only converged endpoint management. Trusted by the U.S. military and the majority of the Fortune 100, Tanium helps manage and protect nearly 30 million endpoints. Tanium, the power of certainty. Visit securityweekly.com/Tanium to learn more. Can your incident response technology collect from off-network endpoints? Xterra FTK Enterprise can. Endpoints are no longer located in a physical office, and organizations need a comprehensive investigation tool that enables holistic data collection and review. With FTK Enterprise, you can also scan for IOCs and MISP indicators. You can scan with Yara rules, and you can use integrations to trigger automatic endpoint collections. Visit securityweekly.com/Xterra for access to their white paper, Incident Response for a Remote World. Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Don't miss any of your favorite Security Weekly content. Visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to any of our podcast feeds and have all new episodes downloaded right to your phone. You can also join our mailing list, our Discord server, and follow us on social media and our streaming platforms, which are YouTube and Twitch. And also, if you have some extra time, if you like the show, if you have some feedback, anything like that, go to Apple Podcasts, leave us a review. We'd really appreciate it. We love to hear the feedback. Or yell at us on Twitter. I'm Zawaba, SAWABA. And then Sec Weekly is the whole group of Security Weekly shows on Twitter. All right, now for the Enterprise Security Weekly news. You can follow along with us if you go to securityweekly.com/ESW283. That is this episode. And there's a lot of interesting stuff this week. We've actually had... I was thinking maybe it would be the week of Black Hat, but I guess the week before Black Hat makes sense to make some exciting announcements. Felt a little, the news fountain felt a little dry the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, everybody was saving up for this week, Adrian. You don't announce during Black Hat. You announce the 3 to 4 days before Black Hat to get in before everybody else. That's right.
Everybody's too drunk.
I was going to say calendar too full, but yeah, that too.
Oh,
all right. So let's work through the funding here. Some big funding. It's big, not all that exciting to me personally, but BlackRock tossed $250 million into Acronis, bumping their valuation from $2.5 billion to $3.5 billion. And I didn't realize that they were originally that they're based out of, I think, Switzerland. Is that correct? And were founded in Singapore. At some point, they moved to Switzerland from Singapore. Sounds like a cryptocurrency startup or Web3 startup.
Yeah, no, they're doing. If this is the one I think it is, they have a Acronis Cloud, right? Which is a encrypted data store in the cloud, encrypted cloud storage. They also offer some anti-malware, antivirus, endpoint protection stuff all in one solution. Is this like a super solution?
They started as a BCPDR company years and years ago.
What is that acronym?
I'm sorry?
What is that acronym? BCDPDR?
You know what she's saying.
Backup, continuity planning, and disaster recovery.
Ooh, okay. Sorry, I did not hear that. I heard a bunch of extra D's and P's in there. wasn't sure what it was.
Maybe
Thought
you
it was
should stop hitting the bourbon while we're talking about that.
No. We definitely hit the bourbon
Shots
during
fired.
this, but it's shots received. I'm definitely hitting the bourbon. But my real question stems around, if Gartner can coin DCP/DPDR and make it something on the hype cycle.
Up and up and up and up. Yes. Yeah, they're an interesting company. They were around, I think they started around 2008. Maybe I could be wrong about the year, but somewhere around there. And they've evolved their products and they, more recently started getting into the fuller cyber protection space. And it was probably for this reason. They probably had a vision of, hey, we were in this market. It's a good complementary market. And now we want a more robust data protection offerings. So, maybe they were looking at an exit. Maybe it was just kismet. Who knows?
Yeah, so 2003 when they were founded, and yes,
half a decade off. Damn it.
Similarly, like I've often just thought of them as a backup vendor, as a very, very backup focused vendor, and that's still a big chunk of their core. But they've done some acquisitions over the years. The most recent one was Synapsys last year. They did, but
do you want to take a guess on the without going over Price is Right style on total funding amount they have in?
I guess. Well, they started back in
2004 was their first funding round was 2004 according to Crunchbase.
I bet it's a lot smaller than. Well, I mean, we know things have ballooned like crazy. 10 million.
No, come on. No, total funding. They've done 5 rounds.
Total funding. I thought you were talking about just the first one. Total funding.
First one, for what it's worth, was 11. You were spot on.
Okay, 100 million total.
Katie, you want to take a guess?
Before this round.
408 million in funding over 4 rounds.
So she must have looked that up. No, if over 4 rounds you don't include the 250 they just took in, Katie, you're pretty darn accurate, because the total, including the 250 they just took in, is $658 million.
Wow.
Yeah,
very nice,
much
Katie.
bigger. Much bigger than I had anticipated, that's for sure. Nicely
done. Yeah, so this is their second $250 million round in the last just a little bit over a year. Wow.
Oh, yeah. TechCrunch, May 4th. Yep.
In 18 months.
So, yeah, I was actually pretty accurate up until a couple of years ago. That they only took that $11 million round between 2004 and 2019.
Yes. They were very
small. So for
small.
15 years, that was their only funding. Wow. Kind of like 1Password, right? Like they were pretty bootstrapped, and then all of a sudden, boom, $100 million dropped on them.
That's because every company could get $100 million when they went and got it.
Well, good point. All right. Also, interesting, we have both Island and Talon, the two enterprise browser startups, cybersecurity startups that are competing right now, both raised. Islands was just kind of and Tyler, I don't know what the proper term is for this, but they already raised like a 100 and something million Series B, and this is like an extra 10 million that's being tacked onto that, and also called Series B.
Yeah, it's a B extension.
A B extension, okay. And it's from Cisco Investments. So Cisco wanted a piece of that enterprise browser game there. And then Talon raised 100 million Series A. So trying to catch up to Island here in terms of funding, and I guess trying to really properly compete with them growth wise.
Do you think this market, as a generalized market, the kind of secure browser market, will ever become a reality? You've been on this market. You've been covering this market for over a decade or so, right?
That's a nice softball. I appreciate that, Tyler.
No, it's an honest to God question, because I know my answer to that is an absolute hard no. But I want to hear your logic behind it, because it's probably much more informed than mine.
Yeah, hard no. So that's the TLDR. Is I think there is a market for this, but I think it's niche. And I think the amounts that they're raising right now, I don't see any exits in their future, that are going to justify what they're raising right now. And because ultimately, and it's not about what you can do with the browser. And absolutely, buyers want more control over what the employee does, where they go, what they do. But man, is it hard to mess with the browser. You screw up the browser experience, and execs, employees, everyone's going to scream. It's going to be like back in the app control days, in the early days of back then, we called it whitelisting. People would grab those products and they're pitching it as like, this is the solution for malware. We're not going to need antivirus anymore, because we're going to have a static list of applications you can run. Nothing else can run. So malware won't be able to work on these systems. And it was just an absolute nightmare because the desktop is complex. It's very, use cases in the enterprise are very, very messy. In fact, I would bet, today there are a lot of enterprises out there where employees have to use more than one browser, because of legacy stuff. Like there's some old real estate website they have to go to that still requires Silverlight or Flash or Java or something like that. And they're jumping back and forth between two different browsers. They can't even get down to one browser, much less a highly controlled, with a really tight policy enterprise browser, like what these guys are pitching. I just think it blows up once you try and deploy it in a real world.
Yeah, you say in the show notes kind of that the fundamental unwritten rule here is that it cannot mess with the browser experience. However, I'm sure, almost guaranteed, because I think I remember seeing it in my analyst days, that some people out there did living under the browser style models with kind of like a browser hypervisor or rootkit technology that gets below the browser, kind of like an app layer, which would not change the actual browser experience itself. Maybe load time's a little longer.
That's a completely different use case, though.
Okay.
But this is all about controlling where they go and what they can do in those places. This is much closer to CASB than it is to like a Bromium or an Invincia. Bromium and Invincia were all, and also the whole category of Spikes, Lightpoint, Intrepid, Authenticate, Menlo, Fireglass. All these companies would put the browser session somewhere else, and it was all preventing malware. Like the whole use case was preventing, if bad stuff ran in that, it would be isolated to just that. Each tab was its own isolated instance, and we would detect it and we'd kill it, and bad things wouldn't happen. Like it wouldn't compromise your whole system. Whereas the value prop here and the use cases they're going after are not anti-malware. It's not keeping bad stuff out of the browser, because honestly, the main browser folks have already solved a lot of that. There's already a ton of isolation being done in Firefox and Chrome and all the major browsers, and protecting against bad stuff. That's why Flash doesn't work anymore. These browsers are just the free ones are just a lot more locked down. So I don't think that's really needed as much anymore.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I don't see a huge TAM here. Maybe they could break into some of that SASE. We're talking in the last interview about how this does kind of overlap with some of what the folks in the SASE front are doing, and even SaaS security. I could see that. Because you can either control what people can do from the cloud side, from the SaaS application side. So if we take Salesforce as an example, you can have something that integrates with Salesforce's API and manages policies and what you can and can't do and that kind of stuff, even data. Or you can be in the browser, because everything in between is encrypted now. There's not really much of an opportunity to do it there. Nobody's using reverse proxies anymore and re-encrypting stuff, and like that was just a nightmare. So
those SASE CASBs don't work anymore. The reverse CASB proxy things?
Not worth the squeeze. They functionally worked. But yeah, if Salesforce changed their website, in a lot of cases, it would break it. Like they'd have to update their mapping because they were rewriting the URLs and stuff like that. So that's why we've seen all the SaaS security stuff move to API.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Yep. Let's see. So Cybrary raised some money. We don't see a whole lot of security training and content vendors show up. Looks like from Build Group and Gula Tech Adventures. So that would be a Series C. So that's kind of cool. Good to see education getting some funding.
And Kevin Mandia, CEO at Mandiant, has joined the board of directors as well.
Very notable.
Yeah, that's a who's who on that system, on that board.
Yeah, absolutely. I am not familiar with Redscale, and I did not take much time. What? Research and develop. They have people in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I haven't heard of this company?
Oh, my goodness. What? How's that even happen?
I don't know. It's like the only store I did not read over or put any notes down on, and it's the one company in Knoxville I've never heard of that's ends up on the news. What are the chances? The headquarters is in Tyson's Corner, Virginia, and R&D is in Knoxville, Tennessee. And what? How do I not know anybody that works here?
According
I know
to
everybody in security in Knoxville.
Yeah, it's a huge city.
Literally.
Too, yeah.
27 of them. No, just kidding.
More like 270.
I know. Gosh.
So it's an automating cyber compliance play, regulatory operations, reg ops, they're calling it, to help heavily regulated organizations evolve and improve compliance and trust at a faster pace than organizations using traditional compliance artifact development and compliance management processes. I wonder if it competes with a Vanta, Tugboat, those guys.
Maybe with a Vanta. But can you guess what their tagline is? It's based on a buzzword that's already come up today.
Oh gosh! Oh no!
It's time to shift compliance left.
Oh God! Oh God!
It's another shift left.
Yeah, we shift everything left.
Can we move on to another story? I'm afraid of what I might say.
They are saying, though, that their next generation governance, risk, and compliance platform integrates with existing security and compliance platforms, delivering evergreen compliance documentation, visualizing compliance and operational risk. It's a Vanta Tugboat competitor. What's interesting, though, that did catch my eye as something different than the rest of those competitors is that they've recorded triple-digit revenue growth, which is fine, right? You never know. That could be $1 to $3. But with nearly 8,000 downloads of freemium community edition platform. So I'm curious, they mentioned the word downloads. They actually use the word downloads, which means it could be an on-premise product, which seems kind of odd given today's current design models of applications and systems.
Yeah, it's interesting. They have a community edition as well. Or is that what you were talking about?
Yeah, the freemium community edition. And they say 8,000 downloads of the freemium community edition.
Huh. Interesting.
And over a dozen customers for its enterprise platform.
Well, it's like we were talking about DSPM and why DSPM has you run their product in your cloud. And again, it's because a lot of the data that it's going to be categorizing and mapping and stuff like that, you don't want to leave your organization. So maybe that's the reason. It looks like they basically have a Docker containers, that you can run in your environment. And if you're putting sensitive data in there that you don't want to leave the organization, I guess that makes sense. But yeah, interesting. I'll have to see if I know anybody that works there, and maybe if they want to sponsor Besides Knoxville next year.
It always comes down to you. I got it.
Yeah, just make it all about me.
Absolutely.
I was surprised to see Knoxville in that story.
Well, they just got $20 million in funding, so they surely can pony up for a sponsorship for 2022.
Yeah, especially with our sponsorships being 1,500, 2,500, and 3,500.
Another subtle plug.
The next one, I still did not come up with a good joke for this. I think Gus said in my ear, Ghost Security materializes. There's got to be a good joke in there. But yeah, it just came out of stealth, or you could say just materialized. Ghost Security is another API security vendor. And there's a ton of these now. And I'm going to have to dig a little bit deeper into these because they can't all be doing the same stuff. And in the last year, I've counted over a dozen API security vendors coming out of stealth and raising rounds.
Because it's an extremely hot area, right? From an investment thesis standpoint for myself, a few years ago, I pretty much declared anything doing cloud security and API security as the two next frontiers that had to be solved. Now, the hard part is always picking the one or two that are going to be successful out of the 10 that also understand that thesis, right? And then timing them, right? How do they do it different than Salt or one of the old guard that's already claiming to do something similar? So, I just think that this is a super hot area. It's a super interesting area, and differentiators would be key to the success of a company like Ghost.
Yeah, there's already multiple unicorns.
Because everything is built on an integration model, and there was just one of the analyst firms put out something about, if you're not API connected, if you can't find a way to play nicely in the sandbox, you're going to be dead in 10 years. And so when the analysts say things like that, companies do listen, and they try to follow suit and build on to the things that are hot, because when Gartner talks, when Forrester talks, when 451 talks, enterprises listen. They just do. And so, I think it's the combination of buzz in the market along with the funding that's been available. Of course, it's changing, it's shifting a little bit, maybe not left. It might not be shifting left, but it is certainly shifting the funding model. But I think it's just the combination of things that's making this area, along with some others like cloud, really hot. And that, whenever there's something buzzworthy, it's like when Zero Trust came out, Tyler's favorite thing. That year at RSA, there were like 20 Zero Trust or so-called Zero Trust vendors. This is just what happens. And eventually they either get eaten up or they morph into something else. And I think we'll see that. I think API will be built into a larger category, but right now it's just, we build API integrations for this and that and everything. Both Tyler and my companies, we do that. So there's a lot of attention there, and it's warranted, but is it warranted as a standalone space? I'm not sure that's the case.
Yeah, it's a great question, Katie. I think it will be. I think it will end up being a standalone space long term, and the reason why is because of the volume of APIs. So if we believe the thesis of the thesis that we're moving applications to the cloud faster than ever before, once they're in the cloud, people break them apart into their atomic components. We see a massive explosion of cloud workloads, and all of these workloads communicate to each other via APIs. That's one argument for a massive TAM of API security, much more massive than it even is today to support the massive players that we have. And then the other argument is, when I was a kid, we used to write our own code. Then at some point, we switched to actually assembling code from other people's libraries. I don't think we even assemble code from libraries as we move forward. I think we switch to SaaS libraries. What is a library SaaS, right? Software as a service version of a library. It's an API. It's an API to a service that we pay $1, a month for, or whatever we have to pay to get access to that as developers, and we embed those APIs into our systems too. So between those two paradigm shifts that we're seeing in API count, the explosive count of APIs is going to be absolutely crazy exponential. And so I think it leaves some opportunity for things to really get big for some API security vendors.
True, but does that roll up, for instance, to a Signal Sciences now Fastly-esque WAF, or even a CDN, or do these players stand alone? I can see your argument. I can definitely see where it's a big enough space. There are enough APIs. Companies are dealing with, enough volume and ephemerality that it could be its standalone space, or it could really roll up into a bigger category, and you have these megacorps where API security is a slice of what they do, like a CDN company, for instance.
And we have to talk about which APIs we're protecting also, because they're AWS has APIs that my application has to talk to, and my ops team have to talk to. So there's multiple use cases for APIs just within the stuff that AWS provides. Then there's the backend APIs that the different microservices use to communicate with each other within AWS or Azure, whatever cloud, whatever platform that I'm using. Then there's all the operational stuff behind the scenes, all the Kubernetes, all the container stuff. Then there's the API that I make available to my customers from my product, like that's a whole different category of protections that you need there to prevent abuse and misuse of the APIs, access to other customers' data over that API. And then from the customer perspective, using APIs that are provided to you, protecting that use. So there's a whole bunch of use cases here that would roll up into different categories depending on which one you're talking about.
Yeah, I envision those. Yeah, I envision those each being their own thing right now. And for me, the just the sheer size of everything you just talked about, Adrian, when you cobble that all together, I could see those rolling up into like a mega API security style play. But even individually, any one of those companies tend to roll up when their growth slowly stagnates. They then sell into something bigger and roll up, and markets tend to roll up into, get adjacent markets together and to form something bigger when the growth rate of a market as a broad whole starts to stagnate and not grow at, 100 to 300 annually. And so I think the TAM is big enough to actually create IPO level companies that have revenue significantly large enough on API sec alone that it doesn't have to necessarily roll up into something else. It might later on, but I think this is big enough that it stands alone, stands the test of time.
Yeah, I mean, some of those I don't see touching at all. Like take, for example, the stuff that's more ops focused, APIs that my DevOps team are using to manage and monitor workloads. Like, I don't see that coming anywhere close to protecting my customer facing APIs, which is more of like a white ops, which is now human model, which is almost closer to the fraud space, where you want to prevent, abuse and misuse of your public-facing APIs.
Yeah, my biggest problem, quite frankly, though, is if we start to slice and dice too dramatically, we get into another SASE discussion where it's a roll-up of 6 different technologies that are all essentially the same thing, right? A network filter that's applying some kind of network traffic filter to cause something to happen. And I think API sec will likely follow a similar thing. Now, here's what could happen. Gartner coins some mega term similar to SASE and causes a roll-up to occur, at least at a how we market ourselves level, if not, at a literal level. But fundamentally, the way you should look at markets is what does it do and how does it do it? Both things. And if it overlaps in a way that's very straightforward, you could call it something else. You could call the egg a donut, but it's still an egg.
Well, I think it's worth looking at the common denominator, because if you look at SASE, the denominator there is the employee. At one end of any kind of SASE service, you've got an employee, and at the other end, you've got some kind of resources, like maybe it's a proprietary in-house application, maybe it's a SaaS service, something like that. But the employee, I think, makes it easy to roll all that stuff up because it's the same denominator. It's not changing. Whereas on the API side, the buyers in that denominator changes somewhat.
So I disagree. I don't think that it's the user that allows that roll-up to occur that you're talking about. Think of it this way. All software does 3 things: data in, analytics, data, actionable something out, actionable intelligence or workflow or something happening out the back end. That's software. Every software does that, right? And so in the case of the SASE discussion we just had, the unifying component is the collection of data. It's all occurring at the same spot, right? And I think that's what you might see in some of this API stuff, whether it's an API proxy model or whether it becomes a, like some kind of sidecar in Kubernetes that collects APIs. I'm not exactly sure what the different mechanisms for deployment are in those models, but in so much as where the data collection overlaps, I think that's where you'll see the roll-up occur and the unification of a set of API security tools. So maybe it rolls up into 2 or 3 because there's 2 different ways to collect the data. The analysis and the output's largely the same, but where you collect the data, I think, is the fundamental difference in many of these API security tools.
Yeah, like I said, I need to dig into it more and see specifically what all these different companies are doing.
It's a hot area.
Understand those use cases better. Yeah. All right. Let's see. Not interested in any. Another API security, number 8, Impart Security, seed round of $6 million. Netskope acquired Infiot, which is a company I'm not familiar with, but apparently that helps them fill out their SASE offering. By 2024, 80% of SD-WAN deployments will incorporate SSE requirements. But isn't SSE, didn't Evgeny define SSE as SASE without SD-WAN? I'm confused. Should have covered this. I actually had a note that if we had time, I was going to ask him about this acquisition. And I kind of wish I did, because I don't understand what I'm looking at.
Well, we can jump to number 15 because that has your favorite term in it in the title.
Yeah, and it's okay to jump around because there's some interesting stuff in here. We're not going to get to everything.
Well, do you see the term I'm talking about in number 15?
Shift left. Yeah,
appoints Stuart McClure as CEO.
It's not just a term you can abuse. It's the actual legal name of a company as well, which makes it even more confusing. Imagine if there's a company out there just called Zero Trust.
That would be great SEO. I mean, I'd like to work for that marketing team.
Would you?
Yeah.
Talk about a confusion level.
Well, I don't do that stuff, so I would probably be the worst person in that role.
So I don't know what Stuart. I don't know what Stuart McClure's been doing since he exited Cylance to BlackBerry. I assume his contract to stay at BlackBerry ran out probably years ago. Not sure what he's been doing since then, but he is now CEO of ShiftLeft.
Him and Kevin Mandia, now popping into different things in the same weekly report here. But the ShiftLeft folks, this company's been around a while. Since I've been in the AppSec space, I've known ShiftLeft for a few years now, and it's really neat to see. The idea was very good, and they need a leader like Stuart to really take them to the next level. So I think this could be a Harvard case study style example of a company that faltered. And if you put the right leader in place, you can see a massive change. So I'm going to be following this one pretty closely because, they weren't growing. They were very static, kind of hurting from a leadership perspective in general. And if this makes a world of difference, it really goes to show you how a leader can change the direction of a company. So this is going to be a great case study to keep an eye on.
Yeah, he's very, very well respected in the industry. He's been around a long time and seen a lot of things. And I do think, not to get too far off track from ShiftLeft and Stuart McClure, but I do think that the people at the helm, I know it's cliche to say, but they set the tone. If they have a good plan, if they hire people who are good and diligent and they trust them and they can right size the organization, it can definitely make a big difference. And with so many cybersecurity companies and the economy being what it is, there are really big opportunities right now. Some companies are going to really thrive because they're going to tighten up and they're going to really focus in on the right strategic things. And others are just going to flounder and the economy is probably going to hit them really hard. So, if you have a really good leader who can focus on the things that will start to make an impact on enterprises, now's a really good time to do it because it's not like budgets are going to be as free and wild over the next at least 12 months.
Yeah, let's see. Thoma Bravo picked up Ping Identity for $2.8 billion. The amount, the size of the deal, I think, is the most interesting thing to me. I'm not sure. We've seen Thoma Bravo do other large take privates. So y'all tell me. I don't know if there's anything more interesting under the surface of this one.
Yeah, the only thing is maybe this is a steal, right? Thoma Bravo is a private equity firm, and this is a take private of Ping Identity Holding Corp, which is a publicly traded cybersecurity company. 52-week high. I was just trying to see. $30.42. 52-week high. Looking back to 2021, it hit as high as in the mid 30s, 36, 37 a share. Currently sitting at was currently sitting as of yesterday at about 16, and shot up to 28 today on the back of the news of this acquisition, which is, I think, the announced price of acquisition was going to be around 28 a share. So, I'm not surprised at this type of take private, and I'd be surprised if we don't see more of this in the cybersecurity space, because the valuations are, 36 down to 16. It's just massively depressed. They're getting such a great price to do these take privates and ride them for a couple of years until the market comes back, and then re-IPO them.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen any bad deals yet. They all seem to work out pretty well for them.
Well, private equity people are no dummies most of the time. There's definitely a few out there, but.
Yep. Some interesting stuff here. 1718, some interesting regulatory stuff. Cryptocurrency, there are dozens and dozens of bills about just all kinds of various things related to cryptocurrency being passed. So with a big market downturn, it's interesting to see if all this legislation helps or hurts cryptocurrencies, kind of find a grip and battle their way back, to where maybe somewhat close to where they were. I don't know if that makes them more stable or harder to do, but certainly we can have some of them die off and be fun, I think. Related to that, the SEC has now created a 50-person team called the Crypto Assets and Cyber Unit. This story is from Protocol, and I agree with the author here. I like crypto cops better. That's a better term. Objectively better. So yeah, I mean, it's you can decentralize all you want, you can DeFi all you want, but government's all up in it now.
Yeah, I mean, when the government gets involved, things get scary, right? Good or bad. You never know what direction they're going to take it from a regulation standpoint.
Involved, how much money has been lost? Like, I was just reading another story. It said 8,000 wallets got emptied because there was some log file in an open S3 bucket that had everyone's paper key listed.
Could you imagine being the hacker that finds that? Adrian, go back to your day when you were pen testing all the time and you were breaking into stuff. You're like,
I did find stuff like that, but not with cryptocurrency, not with individual people's wallets.
Individual people's wallets, completely unregulated, that you can script the stealing of millions of dollars in seconds. Like that's really like, ooh, I hit a jackpot when I find that one.
So I did due diligence on an IoT product we were going to buy, and did script access to 8,000 retail companies' networks.
Was there direct ability to drain their bank accounts? Because that's what's super exciting about crypto hacks.
But those were the networks that they had their POS systems on. So
you'd have got there. You'd have got there eventually.
But you had to, I mean, in that case, you would have to physically go to each location and jump on those wireless networks to do anything to that stuff.
Gotcha. So let me ask you a follow-on question about the crypto, though.
This is much worse.
Yeah, the crypto follow-on question I have for you is, which is a better thing to happen for crypto? To remain unregulated and be the wild, wild west when it comes to security, safety, etc., or to become regulated and lose the fact that they're decentralized, which is a significant piece of the value of what they bring to the table?
Value to who, though? Who is that? Like certainly it's not consumers without any consumer protection. I think without regulation, you've got potential chilling effect. And people aren't going to want to, because people aren't technical enough to understand the difference between cold wallets, hot wallets. I mean, there's so much you have to learn to even get into this. With the amount of complexity in it, the moment, people fear losing all their money, putting it into one of these things, I think has a chilling effect. Without, like, immediately after, what was the one that got hit and started offering like an FDIC $250,000 guarantee? That was that's the one that advertises on F1.
Binance? Was it Binance?
It wasn't Binance. Yes, they also advertise. There are a lot of crypto F1 sponsors. Hold on, I'll pull it up here in just a moment.
They got more money than they know what to do with. That's why everybody's sponsoring F1.
Yeah, but basically one of these big exchanges had to put in some consumer protection. They had to put in a guarantee that, hey, and I think investors had to actually shore them up when they lost all that money. But yeah, I think it's going to have a chilling effect without some kind of recourse for consumers. Because right now, the way a blockchain works, there's no undo button. There's no correcting errors. It's written in stone once it's written to that blockchain. And some of the fraud has been so bad, they've forked entire cryptocurrencies just to pretend that a fraud event didn't exist. It was crypto.com was the one.
Gotcha. Yeah. And I don't know if you saw this yesterday, but on Coinbase, crypto exchange Coinbase has reportedly asked the U.S. Supreme Court, the highest level federal court, to send 2 recently filed lawsuits to arbitration. Federal trial judges in both cases had previously rejected Coinbase's move to send the disputes to arbitration, which the exchange said was required under its user agreements. Coinbase is effectively appealing these decisions. These particular cases, if I recall correctly, were about lost funds and accused Coinbase of violating the Electronic Funds Transfer Act based on hacking and lost funds. So this stuff's at the Supreme Court level. The U.S. is going to have to make decisions on this at some point in the near future.
Yeah, this much money being lost, and the whole discussion over whether or not cryptocurrency and NFTs are securities, which I from everything I've read and heard, I'm leaning more towards the security side. Like it meets the definition, pretty well. I think this is the future of it. And those dozens and dozens of state level laws and legislation going in. A lot of that's going to get passed, and it's going to get even more like the technology is complex enough. Now the law is going to get complex around it,
which is going to make everything more difficult for everyone. So it's going to be an interesting thing to watch. And then as far as Coinbase goes, they could be in a world of hurt, with all these lawsuits. There were also lawsuits apparently about giving away money. If you bought Dogecoin, you got extra money or something. And then there was a thing that you didn't actually have to buy Dogecoin to get the money, and they didn't publicize it enough, and all sorts of stuff. People are just gunning to take down Coinbase right now.
It just seems like every day there's a new rug pull or, a new triple-digit $1 million loss or theft or something like that. It's just the Wild West is a bit too wild.
Yeah.
So while we're talking about laws, number 20 is an interesting one where Uber basically is now off the hook because they're basically snitching on their own prior employee. This is something where I don't want to get too decisive on my opinion in it because I really need to read more about the details. But I think certainly most of the CISOs and security folks I've talked to are more on Joe Sullivan's side, where, and I don't know all the details. I assume he talked to Uber's counsel. And for people who don't know the background here, basically, Uber got hit. The people that accessed this driver information, 600,000 drivers' license numbers, and 57 million rider details belonging to riders. Basically, they reported it to them, and you see this a lot with extortion. Is they position themselves as researchers. Oh, look, we found some data. It's going to cost you to get it, for us to delete it. And so through HackerOne, he paid them to have them delete it, and basically it was treated as a bribe. Now he's being prosecuted for it. And I can't imagine he would have done this without legal, like rubber, stamping every step, checking off everything he's going to do. I can't imagine him just going and doing this without general counsel. So this kind of feels like
the whole big controversy here because there's a lot of he said, they said. And everything I've read about it, and I did try to dig into it, and I spoke to a couple of cybersecurity lawyers about it a few years back to get their takes on it, and I'm sure there's documentation somewhere of things that happen. If there isn't, that's a major problem and major faux pas on everybody's side in the Uber landscape.
Yeah,
a lot of it is just, people saying, well, I did this or this happened or that. There's no, at least to the outside world, there's no audit trail. At least as far as anybody outside the case knows. There are people saying that Joe, when he was the CISO, did go to the board, did go to the legal team, did talk to people internally, and Uber is saying, hey, oh, no, we didn't. So yes, there's a lot of speculation. I don't think we know even a piece of it, but if he went to them and they rubber stamped it, then this is especially egregious. If he went around them, it's still kind of egregious because, they're basically saying, we've done no wrong here. And there are plenty of other things that we know in the news that Uber has done that hasn't been on the up and up anyway. But really throwing somebody under the bus when, if something bad happens under your watch, as an executive team, as a board, you have to take some sort of responsibility. I'm not saying that if somebody goes completely rogue, completely off the rails, that you are responsible for that. That's not what I mean at all. But if you hire somebody in a senior level position, and if they're at least doing some of the things right, then this doesn't feel right at all. Again, I don't know many of the details. I had looked into it years ago when this happened and then a few years later, but it feels like this is just an awful move by Uber to get themselves out of bad water and get themselves out of bad press yet again.
This is a tough one. Like, it's really, really tough to know because when you read the article, it literally says, he's accused of attempting to cover up the 2016 breach by disguising an extortion payment to the hackers as a bug bounty. Sullivan was accused by federal prosecutors in August 2020 of having paid two hackers $100,000 in hush money to cover up the breach. The hackers later pled guilty to computer fraud and conspiracy charges. In December 21, a federal grand jury indicted Sullivan, charging him with et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Sullivan denies the allegations. A spokeswoman for Sullivan previously said that every action he and his breach response team took involved close collaboration with legal, comms, and relevant teams at Uber in accordance with the company's written policies. And really, I think that's what it comes down to. Did he? Is there a complete audit trail? And I'll tell you right now, I can't imagine Uber is going to push back on this if there is an audit trail. Like, they're going to know. Sullivan's in the tough spot because he doesn't have access to all of the company emails, everything that went back and forth. He doesn't have access to that. It makes it much harder for him to prove his case.
Yes. Well, I mean, I know it was Uber, but even at Uber in 2016, surely there's some financial controls there, and he's not able to just go rogue and make $100,000 transfer over to HackerOne. I don't know. Maybe if the company's
maybe there is. Adrian, that could have been a multi-million dollar. That could have been a multi-million-dollar crowdsourced hacking model, where $100K payment, we do those once a quarter, twice a quarter.
Yeah, it could be. Mm-hmm. Could be
Tough
that was already budgeted.
Yep,
and slotted for it. Yeah, that's possible. Well, it's going to be an interesting one to follow. I wonder how much of this, how much of the evidence and stuff like that is going to be in the public light, but we'll certainly keep an eye out for how this progresses. I know a lot of the people that I chat with on a regular basis that are CISOs are going to have a close eye on this because it's going to have a big impact on how they protect themselves. As CISOs.
And you should have an audit trail, and you should have documentation, and you should make sure that you have a CYA when you're doing anything big.
Oh, and also you have to do security work.
Well, yes, that too.
At some point, it's insane the stuff I see CISOs go through. Just to just a CYA before they get the job in the first place. Like it's months and months of contract revisions and redlining and negotiations. It's insane. It's a job to get a job as a CISO. One more maybe I want to talk about here, and then we can do the squirrel stories and then wrap up here. Wanted to get y'all's thoughts on number 21 here. It's not really so much security related, but since we do talk about a lot of financial stuff, I thought this tweet from Zach Cantor, who I'm not personally familiar with, talking about how Google Cloud cannot be profitable because Google is how did he put it? Google is whose core product is high margin, is building, doesn't have the cost discipline to build a low margin secondary product, which the low margin secondary product is Google Cloud. And the high margin product is Google AdWords, right? Is the search ads.
Huh. Who is this guy? What's the background on Zach Cantor? Do we know who he is? Founder and CEO of Steady, EDI for developers and previously ProForge, acquired by Huron Capital. Serverless enthusiast, occasional blogger, and all-around nerd. Okay. I mean, sure, he has the financial background? No, wait, never mind. No, he doesn't have the financial background to make this statement. No, I don't get it, right? There's tons of companies out there that have built core products that are super high-margin products and then are able to build low-margin secondary products alongside of it. I don't understand where he's coming from to say that you can't build enough cost discipline. I think what he's implying is that if you have a product that generates massive margin percentages, that as a business you will not be cost disciplined. That is required when building a low margin product. Therefore, they're incongruent to work together. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. You could structure the business separate P&Ls, separate business units that are isolated in ways that allow expertise on cost discipline to permeate a second business unit. I'm not sure that I'm buying this statement.
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly very big, like overarching statements.
Yeah, a little hand wavy for me.
All right, let's go to the last squirrel story here. The second one is more one that you experienced than we discuss on the show. So number 22, feel free to hit hit that link. And keep in mind, it's a joke. It's 3389rocks.com. Folks that are familiar with how a lot of companies get compromised will find the humor in there.
Oh my gosh. Just the words alone. We're not regular security people. We're like cool security people. That's awesome.
We believe the internet shouldn't have walls, and that includes firewalls.
This is wonderful.
Well, that would be an interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Maybe it is worth discussing. When everyone is a domain admin, everything works.
This is great. Yeah, this is going out on my Twitter feed for sure.
Yeah, that was a fun one. I don't know who made that, but kudos. It was pretty funny. It was well done. And then the second squirrel story is I saw Winamp is releasing a new version after 4 years in development. So it hit me with some nostalgia there. It got me interested enough to dig a little bit. But also found that, of course, there are Winamp NFTs. There's an art contest. And of course, because why not?
This is absolutely awesome. It's definitely a throwback moment for me too. I sat in many an hours sitting in front of my computer in undergrad with the Winamp and the visualizer full screen while drinking beers in undergrad. So definitely, I'm a huge fan of this. Very nostalgic.
Same. Yeah, and the NFT art needs to be derived from the original Winamp skin. Is how they're kind of working Winamp into it, because skinning Winamp was a big thing, and there were thousands and thousands of plugins and skins back in the day, and you customize it. And I kind of miss that. Like that was a big thing. Like you see somebody else's computer, you get to see how they skinned Winamp. And
I might have to download a Mac version of Winamp just for the nostalgia of it. But I don't have any MP3s left to play. I stream everything.
I don't think there is was there ever a Mac version of Winamp? I don't think there was.
I just assumed somebody ported it at some point, but it doesn't matter anyways, because I literally do not have an MP3 on my system anymore.
Yeah, no, same. I do have some on my NAS. I've got a bunch of old MP3s backed up on my network storage. So yeah, I could. Well, it can also stream and handle podcasts now, apparently.
All right. Well, maybe I'll use it for streaming. We'll see.
Yeah. All right. That's about it. They're also hiring. They have 7 positions open. I'm
in. Let's go.
A couple of the in the job rec, knowledge of the inner workings of the industry is a plus, and good taste in music is optional. That also got a chuckle out of.
That keeps me in. That keeps me
subjective as well.
It keeps me in. I'm accepted.
All right. Thanks so much, Tyler and Katie, for joining me today. It was a fun one today.
Enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Adrian.
Big thanks to everyone for watching or listening to this week's episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.